interest of time and not wanting to get a red card, I'm going to dive straight in because, let's face it, I think this is more than red enough for today, isn't it? Let's be honest. So, I'm going to let you absorb that quote. I found this very interesting. I've seen it once or twice in my life. I don't know whether any of you are familiar with it or any smart people in the audience know who gave that quote, who's responsible for it. Shout out, don't be shy. No, it's actually by Mark Twain. I found it very interesting. I don't know whether Mark would have the same view of the world if he was alive today, given that we've moved on so fast with technology over the last several decades. But I like to think what he meant by it was that once you get a good idea, we don't rest on our laurels and we can iterate that, and as an exercise in continuous improvement, we build on that time after time. And I think the light rail sector is a good example of that, where we do have an idea and we share, we collaborate, and we have to improve that because there's an awful lot of nuance in our sector, and I think that requires us to kind of think out of the box a little bit more, and money being what it is, even more so. So what is innovation? I must admit I'm guilty of being a bit seduced by that word myself, so much so that I asked my boss to put it in my title 3 years ago, and I had no idea what I was signing up for really in terms of innovation, but it sounded nice. It's a buzzword, isn't it? And I think we could be forgiven for jumping straight to the conclusion that, you know, technology is innovation and it just has to be technology. And I don't necessarily agree with that. I think, you know, innovation can be something as simple as asking a different question, or maybe asking a similar question in a different way. As it says there, you know, often technological advancements, yes, but business models and organisational processes. And I put that up there because the image you can see there on your screen is of the LRSSB integrated safety model, which encompasses TARE, which for those of you who don't know is the Tram Accident Incident Reporting Database. That has all metrics put in by the sector, plenty of data. It's kind of changed the way we look at the safety data in the UK. We can now look at it as a benchmark, and holistically we can compare one system to another, which is not always a desirable state to be in for some. That then gets fed into the safety risk model. That pumps out what our top risks are in the sector in terms of I'm very sensitive, unlike me, in terms of what the kind of low frequency, high impact and high frequency, low impacts are. That then gets risk assessed through the bow tie, and we audit ourselves through the RM3 process. So I think that's a really good example of what I consider to be innovation that's changed the game in terms of safety in the light rail sector. Some of the things that have been going on in terms of innovation for the last several years. I think it was Marilena mentioned the sad, tragic events at Sandilands. As bad as they were, and we never want to repeat them, you always find that some good and some positive has to come from that. And that is a drive in innovation and safety in this respect. And LRSSB in 2019 produced some guidance on speed management systems. This was to help the sector procure a system, go down that path. And interestingly, as it says there, the RABE, I believe it does, they didn't specify what you have to have within their recommendations. They often don't. It's not their job to do that. And interestingly, the sector went down different paths. And I think this is testament to being bold and experimenting and finding a solution that fits you instead of one size fitting all. So you've just got some examples up there of a side move, which is in operation in Tenerife, and I believe Sheffield are looking at that. TrackLink, which is the Croydon system, slightly different. LeadMind, Edinburgh Trams are running that with their partner, maintenance partner CAF, and Compass is a system that Blackpool have looked at. So all different solutions to the same, I was going to say challenge, opportunity, take your pick. So again, just on more recommendations from Sandilands, LRSSB again produced LRG17, which is driver and attention systems. A couple of systems up there. The one on the left, Guardian, for those who don't know, has been implemented at Toll. Sadly, Croydon was where the incident happened. That's been in operation now for around 6 years, I believe, and the data that it's fed back has just been game-changing in terms of fatigue, in terms of adopting new rosters, being able to have that empirical data instead of maybe a driver coming and saying, you know, I don't like the shift or I feel tired. They've actually got some real robust data there, which has helped inform Toll and the way they approach. And our colleague Ben Groom, for those of you that know him, he gives a fantastic presentation on their fatigue management system, so it's worth, for those of you that are interested, following up on that. And to the right is Focus Plus. This is a project that It's a hugely collaborative project. Edinburgh Trams, Edinburgh Council, UK Tram, LRSSB have part-funded this. And the reason I think this is a good one is that whilst it's ticked the box in terms of a safety mitigation and something that's going to help drivers and something that's going to help manage fatigue, it's also got a commercial aspect. And I don't think we should apologise for that. Yes, absolutely, we're trying to drive safety, but if we can produce something that has a revenue that potentially pumps that back into the sector, I think that's also a good thing. And often we fail to get innovation funding. I'm fully aware of this because of the commercial case is just not there or the business cost benefits analysis. So I've put at the bottom there, collaboration plus innovation equals commercialisation. I think in this instance it certainly has. And as it says there, Edinburgh in the process of testing this 98% effectiveness, which I think is phenomenal. You know, anywhere up near that 100 is just kind of off the chart. And, you know, watch this space for that because Edinburgh are bringing that to market. So we're really quite proud as a sector to have engaged in that. Get my notes. Excuse me a second. So another issue, I have to say trap and drag, for those of you that are aware, it probably self-explanatory in terms of people getting caught indoors, whether that's maybe a handbag strap or maybe part of a buggy or something. Whilst this doesn't happen often, we're a relatively safe sector. When it does happen, it could be quite tragic and the consequences quite severe. So one of the things that LRSSB has been looking at for some time is that technology. But like with a lot of technology, and I've just been having this conversation with a colleague, is often we'll be told that it's doing X, and in actual fact, it's not quite there yet. It's not fully fledged. It's not all singing and dancing and that cliche. It doesn't exactly do what it says on the tin. So we've been looking at this technology. It's iterative again. It keeps getting better. A couple of colleagues there just to prove that we do some work now and again, although it was a jolly to Trams. We've got colleagues from UK Tram and LRSSB looking at the latest door technology. And, you know, as it says there, you've got your causes, mechanical failures, obstructive sensors, and then some of the solutions. And what I always like to see in this is when you're going and looking at something, especially in a trans, you always see the next iteration of that, or there's something better coming along. Why do I want to buy that? I may as well wait for that. And some of the things down there, it won't shock you to see AI there and haptic feedback. So we're watching this space. And one of the things we're very cognizant of at LRSSB is that we want to put out white papers, we want to put out technical reports, we want to do guidance. But we also want to be very confident that what we're saying is accurate. We're not here to sell products, we're not here to endorse products, but at the same time we can hopefully give that real factual feedback loop and data to the sector so that you're making informed decisions. Just as at the bottom, I think, you know, Midland Metro were one of the kind of pioneers of this, and they were highly commended at the Global Light Rail Awards. Although, interestingly, by their own admission, that technology's not been implemented because there are challenges with retrofitting and such. But one of the things we were tasked with by the DFT, and it's a lofty goal, is to start to work with the supply chain more, especially rolling stock, people who develop rolling stock like the CAFs of the world, and normalise these things. So these things aren't just nice to have, they become the seatbelt of the car, where it just is a standard fare. But given the kind of order book for trams in the UK, which is small at the best, it's very, very difficult, as has been mentioned before, from a procurement point of view, we're little fish in a very big pond. But the conversation has to start somewhere, and the sooner we have it, the better. Some more technology, more recent. A lot of you will be aware of collision avoidance systems or optical detection systems. Again, there are numerous on the market, and they're all doing variants of certain things. We partnered with Bosch a couple of years ago, we being LRSSB, and we trialled their kit on the Sheffield Super Tram. We went and we rode the tram, my CEO, my boss, Carl Williams, and we got real-time feedback. And again, it was another one of those examples where it didn't quite do what they were saying it did. And that's nothing sinister from Bosch. Again, they were just developing the technology. It was developed for a German market who had more of a commercial push than a safety push. So due to that feedback, I think it's 2 years on now, Bosch have developed that system and developed it again, and it's improved. And I say that because I think that's a great example of working with the supply chain, being open-minded, saying, yeah, you know, kind of we want to work with you in terms of understanding what it does and what it doesn't do, and give you that feedback so that you can make that product better and potentially sell more. This particular system here, I'll just give a bit of a shout out to Noah Brens, who are kind of promoting and advocating the EYES system. This was recently on display at the UK Tram Summit. It's got a lot of potential. Manchester are looking at this because they couple vehicles, and it does certain things in terms of sensors where people have sadly climbed through vehicles and had incidents and accidents. So we're hoping to partner with one of the systems and trial this. Again, we have to be very careful that we're not like hitching our wagon to one supplier, and there's a bit of bias there. So we do openly invite suppliers to come in, but ultimately we've got to trial these things with at least one system, and it's not always feasible to do every single one. But what we will do is we'll share that data. But we also have to be open as a supply chain to understand that there will be, dare I say, some negative points there in terms of what we've learned, and you might not want to hear that, but hopefully they take that forward and improve. So kind of more of the moment now. I go back to the TARE model, and one of the incredible things that's done is it's told us, again, where our risks are. We already knew this, so it didn't come as a big surprise, but unfortunately we injure or kill more people at what we refer to as non-motorised user crossings than anywhere else on the systems. These are systems that are clearly not controlled by signals. We're a line-of-sight system. Now, what's the point in having this data if we're not going to use it to use technology to try and mitigate those risks? So we're working with a couple of organisations. We've got 2 meetings with them this Monday coming as it happens. This particular company, I won't name them, but they do a lot of work in the AI sector, human factors, cameras with road. They've reduced incidents and accidents on road with this technology. What we want to understand is why the behaviour that's happening at these crossings is happening, why people still being hit. A lot of it, sadly, we all know it's distraction. It's being on phones. It's having headphones on. It's, you know, being away with the fairies, pushing a buggy. Multiple distractions in today's world. So we want to develop some technology that interrupts that. Of course, there are things in Europe and all over the world where we've got lit crossings and we've got, you know, voices that are coming over speakers saying, you know, there's a tram coming. But we think we can do more. But one of the things I always say about innovation and R&D and technology is sometimes we have to go down that road to prove that we don't want to go down it anymore. Our good friends and colleagues at the ORR are very kind of open to say, well, we understand there is an obligation to look at these things, but we're not expecting that it becomes ubiquitous and we have to put these things everywhere. You take, for example, the size of some of the networks. You know, I've got Edinburgh in the room. I'll say Edinburgh maybe put this technology at 10 crossings, and by comparison Manchester have put it at 100 crossings. It becomes a very expensive thing for them to do, and potentially, you know, shut the doors, go home, we don't have the money. So as well as being a safety body, we have an obligation to do, again, what's reasonably practicable, and work with the ORR as partners to say, well, this isn't a, you know, kind of, it's certainly not one size fits all. It's not going to be, it's not a panacea for everything. And they understand that. And I think by having us as a middle organisation, they're all ears. So just following up, the second strand of that is looking at this technology, just to prove that we do a lot of trials and we're open. We work with another organisation who have developed some technology, which initially was for track workers and rail, where it would alert a track worker to the fact that a vehicle was potentially coming, a train at 100 mile an hour, because naturally they don't drive line of sight. So even though we do drive a line of sight, we automatically think, well, we care as much about our track workers as Network Rail do, and so naturally, why wouldn't we explore the possibility of having this for all our track people? And, you know, in terms of, yes, the driver's looking out, they can see the track workers, but there's nothing wrong with having an extra layer of safety. So kind of as part of that R&D, we also wanted to understand if we could have something at the track side that would alert us that a tram's coming. We tried this technology. You can see it just in the picture there. It's very basic in its form, but the great news for us was that we found it absolutely did work. The technology, the laptop as it was, got a message to say 30 seconds, the tram's 30 seconds away, it's approaching the crossing, whether you're a track worker or not. This is aimed at pedestrians primarily. So the next phase of that is for us to try and establish some kind of technology that's going to alert pedestrians, potentially again interrupt them, to say this is the tram's approaching, you need to understand that you're now entering into a tram zone. For those of you that have seen the National Safety Campaign, which is being rolled out all across the UK networks, it's the 2 lines. It's trying to get people to understand that you're now stepping into a very hazardous zone, and we want that disconnect. We want people to instantly understand that they're now entering into a different environment, and it's very difficult. So we've got a lot of high hopes for this. Naturally, it needs funding. LRSSB is a small organisation. We're funded, as James said this morning, from the government and from the sector. the sector already have, as we've seen all day, numerous challenges in terms of where their finances go, and we don't want to be putting a bigger burden on. So we have to cut our cloth very, very fine. We have to be careful where this money goes. So we're going to invest in the first phase of this and potentially look to the government to bring it to market. Again, we're not here to produce products and sell them, but if we're getting a safety benefit from it, then it makes sense for us to do that. One of the things that we're very proud of is under development, it's nearly 12 months old now, is what we're referring to as a learning management system. I'll give a shout out again to our good friends at Edinburgh. They've had a similar system in operation for around 12 months now. Forgive me if it's not 12 months, Lee, but I saw this because we had this notion that we wanted to do a similar thing for the sector. I'd got a concept that I wanted to roll out, and lo and behold, as they often do, Edinburgh had already started it. So it made sense that we jumped on that bandwagon, and they were kind enough to allow us to second their head of learning and development to the sector. And we spent the last 12 months developing this. And the basic premise is that it's going to be a parent site that's hosted and run by LRSSB and UK Tram, somewhere where we can share learning, courses, lessons learned, a repository for anything and everything with regards to L&D. And I think the beauty about L&D is, you think about it much wider than it's not just training and it's not compliance and competency. It's everything that we do every single day. But effectively, bolted onto that, what we hope, and people have shown a real interest, is that we now have 7 child sites that sit under that. So you've got Manchester, Edinburgh, Nottingham, etc. But they've got full autonomy of their own site, but they're also part of a community where they can share good practice and all these wonderful things. So effectively, they're going to migrate their training and competency compliance into a digital system. And some of the things it says there are quite obvious in terms of what the benefits it brings. We have had incidents, sadly, where people have been out of competency and we've overlooked things, and the ROR have had to investigate. And we believe by having this as a sector standard, because again, the clue's in the name, it's not all about writing boring documents, we can standardise a lot of stuff using technology. And kind of the art of the possible moving forward is, again, we start to develop this with the partner in terms of recruitment and identifying specific job roles and people who are fit for projects. And I guess taking that bias out of some of the decisions that we make. So it's not about, again, replacing humans with AI, but it's about tapping into the advantages of AI. So again, the flavour of the day is sustainability. It's green. It's net zero. And as I was doing my research on this, because I don't know everything about light rail, I'm still very much learning like everyone else. It sort of surprised me a little bit how much of this is happening globally. But as you can see up there, it's also happening in the UK. We do spend a lot of time now berating ourselves, saying how far behind the rest of the world we are in terms of light rail and technology, and clearly, judging by that, that's not the case. So I was surprised to find some real kind of carbon initiatives that I thought were amazing, and I do think we absolutely need to leverage these when it comes to having the discussion about extensions and how we get the government to agree to build new systems. And I think we all hope that with the onset of the WICA, which is the mass transit and potentially a tram system in Leeds, they look at some of these things. It was no shock to me that Amsterdam had used wind power. What a cliche that is, with the windmills and everything. But I just think that's really, really buoyant from my perspective about what the art of the possible is and how we can use efficient renewable energy sources to make our tramways and light rail even more appealing. But of course, that being said, and we can focus on all the positives, there's always going to be blockers. We've discussed in detail today that sometimes light rail is not popular, it's seen as expensive, there's upheaval in cities. We all know the benefits long term, but sadly we have to go through a lot of pain before we get those benefits. So, in terms of what are the financial constraints to building and innovating, naturally, in return on investment, as Jamie said earlier, we shouldn't apologise for making a profit. People are in business, they're in business to make money and hopefully reinvest. So we need to get really savvy about understanding that return on investment, using our resources. Again, it's a flavour of the day where we don't collaborate on enough. We do silo working, we spend the money 3 times. Organisations like LRSSB and UK Tram and PWI absolutely are in a good position to be able to reduce that cost and benefit all. That's one of LRSSB's MOs. It's basically we will not take on a project if it's not benefiting at least 80% of the sector, if not all. Regulatory safety concerns, I kind of wouldn't be a standards man if I didn't mention this. I think often people see standards and safety as a kind of blocker to Innovation, I don't think it has to be. I sat on a panel debate a couple of weeks ago about why standards actually are symbiotic with innovation and how they can assist. I do think they do in the respect that they give us a baseline. But as got mentioned earlier, I think it was Marilyn who said, yeah, I think it is a really comforting thought to have a standard that everybody adheres to. And I'm all for that because it takes kind of the mistakes out of the equation. But it should never be at the expense of trying to improve that particular aspect, whether it's an asset or whether it's, safety. I wouldn't want to see that removed. So it's about the right standards written by the right people with the right intentions, not just to be bureaucratic for the sake of it. Again, there's always going to be a resistance to change. The big debate that's going to rumble for the next 5 years at least is, are we all going to be replaced by AI? Frankly, if I don't have to come to work and do my job and that does it for me, and I get paid, I'm not so sure I'm against that. But anyway, that's just me. And then, complexity and integration. We've mentioned about asset renewals and technology. There is an absolute upheaval when it comes to integrating that. And it's just about getting a bit better of selling those long-term benefits. Jamie mentioned something, I was nodding away earlier, that we're very, very short-term thinking, and a lot of it's to do with politics and the short terms that our politicians have. We've got to be looking at the bigger picture and encouraging that, otherwise we'll never move forward. I've been having the same debates with people for the last 10 years, and it's a slow burner and something needs to change. I throw that in because there are a number of things that can be tapped into. I'll talk a little bit about BCAM earlier on, but they're all about local manufacturing. I think it was mentioned about the US earlier on, where they have some legislation that says they only buy US. Not particularly sure I want to go that far, but I think we should be certainly looking at opportunities on our doorstep, investing in small to medium businesses and working with them and developing technology. So there's a number of things that we can do if we're willing to be bold, if we're willing to think outside the box and not take the path of least resistance. And I just think, we should always keep looking outside our own sector for lessons. We shouldn't get obsessed with just light rail and rail. There are, the automotive industry, the aerospace industry. There are a number of examples there that we can bring into our sector. So just very briefly, because I haven't seen the red card come up yet, but I'm kind of preempting it. I've just thrown a couple of global case studies in here. We'd love to see some new systems get built. We'll settle for the extensions for now. James touched on a lot of those this morning. These have a common theme when you look at them. There are 3, and I'll go through them. There were many, many, many more than 3 that I could have put on, but we've only got so much time. So when you look at the kind of theme that runs through them in terms of the reasons why they've got built, the hurdles, the lessons that are learned, the pitfalls which often are overrun and overcost. I think we really, really, really should be leveraging these projects that have proven that all the things that James spoke about this morning, which we know light rail to do for the urbanisation, they're happening, and there's no reason they shouldn't be happening in this country. We can connect it top to bottom, assuming, of course, light rail is the right solution, as James said. So, I've highlighted some things in red. Back again, long-term dividends, yes, 10, 20 years. The top one there, transportation strategy. We all know this is about interfacing transport. You go to Berlin and you can hop on one mode and the other mode and the other mode, and it's subsidised by the government, and you pay €5 for a ticket, and it's wonderful. I'm not saying it always runs on time, and they've got issues just like we have, but to me that's an example of how transport should be as a user, as an end user. Melbourne, arguably the biggest tram system on the planet. It's really interesting to find out that they've got a free zone, and this is meant to encourage use of trams, getting people to work. Again, the themes there, sustainability, continued investment. Pete and Chris have just spoke about, having to invest in a system and renew it and all of these things and extend it while you're still running and operating. It's like suddenly having 3 kids and then you have another 2 and you've got to figure out a way to feed all 5 now. It becomes more and more and more challenging for people to do. But again, I think Melbourne's a good example of how that can be done and be done well. And finally, I got a bit nervous this morning because my colleague Andreas down there said I shouldn't mention this. It's a bit of a sore subject, but this has not been built yet. I think the testing at the minute, but I just liked the kind of concept and the thinking behind this. It does actually say, the challenges of the construction delays and cost overruns, and it has become quite controversial by all accounts. But again, I love the dedicated right-of-way lanes and things like that. We know what the upheaval is, digging up roads. If we can avoid intersecting with traffic, I think we've got to do that. So, no reason. We can all use the internet now. We can go and speak to people. There's been a strong theme about the supply chain, and I loved again what Jamie said. It was a fantastic presentation. Amongst many was getting early talk to the right people at the right time who've got that expertise, who've felt the pain. Don't just make it about money and procurement and what's easy. So just touching again on the case studies there. Again, some kind of obvious things, but engage with the community. One of the questions that was asked was, how do you let the public know, and businesses and things like that? It is critical. I think often once the spade goes in the ground with the engineers, forgive me engineers, that's almost the easy part. It's all the lead up and the planning, and as Marilyn went into depth in earlier on. Excuse me, again. So, you know, integration with other modes, big push on cycling in the UK now, rightly so. So we've got to be thinking about that when we marry this. We can't be coming out with our own driven agendas. It has to be the bigger picture, I think, holistically. Phased development, you know, again, it's evident in Pete's. Take a phased approach to things, don't, you know, take one bite. And again, that's sustainability. Look at renewable energy, look at reducing costs. We have, as Jamie said, again, a legal obligation to do that. It often gets forgotten in the mix. And government and private collaboration, you know, these are things that we can be looking at in terms of funding and tapping into that as an availability. So just a bit closer to home, James touched on these, so I'm not going to labour the point, but I think, you know, we should shout about these things. The Revolution vehicle, that's looking for kind of a market now. I've been and seen it. It's an incredible, you know, first of a kind. You've got Coventry very light rail. Again, James spoke about that. It's, for me, there's a bit of controversy with it, but Coventry aren't going to get a LRT. They're not going to get what you would call a conventional system. They need something. They've got issues with travel. So they've looked at this as an alternative. And I think as an inclusive sector, if it's this or nothing, then we certainly should be looking at this as an alternative. And I know they're already discussing this worldwide with certain towns and cities in terms of an option for maybe those smaller cities that haven't quite got the size of maybe a Nottingham or a Manchester. And again, BCIMO, I was privileged enough to be invited to their initiative a couple of weeks ago, and they are pumping a lot of money into local businesses who they're hooking up with big companies like Volker Rail and Voestalpine and Network Rail, where they're dying for a solution, and they've got the innovation and the expertise to fill that gap. So it wouldn't be an innovation conversation, would it, without touching on autonomous light rail. We're already seeing it in the automotive sector. It's happening, it's working, it's accelerating. I think, forgive me if people in the room disagree with this, I think we've got a little bit of a ways to go with the tramway and the light rail sector, because I think the challenges are even more so multiple than they are in the automotive sector. And obviously we've got driverless vehicles with regards to Docklands very light rail, but that's a very different challenge. I believe it will come, and it'll come very quickly. Been a lot of conversations about predictive maintenance. We have to tap into AI, sensors, monitors. You know, this is kind of the norm now at Network Rail. I think one of the arguments, and I've just had the conversation, was we haven't got the investment, or we don't want to invest that. I don't think it's necessarily that. I think we just don't sell the long-term benefits of it. Again, we don't get people who pay the money to understand that, yes, you pay now, but the long-term benefits of that are there and they're evident. Manchester I visited recently, we've done an awful lot of work in the predictive maintenance space, and I think they'll be early adopters of this technology. It'll continue to iterate it, and it's fantastic to see what they're doing. It's critical that that gets passed on and shared so that everybody doesn't have to repeat and, as somebody said earlier, reinvent the wheel. I hate that when, you know, we've already done the work and then we forget to ask or share our homework. Some people don't like to do it. And AI, you know, we could have a long conversation about AI. It's coming, utilise it. It's going to be a game changer in nearly every sector. And above connected intelligent light rail system, that blew my mind a little bit, you know, optimisations, traffic flow. How many trams are late, not because of engineering failures, because maybe they've got stuck behind a broken down bus or something like that. I certainly felt that pain at Sheffield. So anything that can help optimise the flow of traffic is going to make people a lot happier. So again, just touching on standards, I've already mentioned this very briefly. They really don't have to stifle innovation. I mean, there's some headlines there. I do think they go hand in hand. I genuinely do believe that. And we have this kind of strap line where we say we want to develop these for the sector, by the sector. And I'm really pleased that no end of supply chain speak to me over the last 12 months and say, we really want to work with you guys. We've got skin in the game here. It's our products. We don't want you to over-standardise our products. If we work with you and we collaborate, we'll get a standard that helps you, but also helps us drive innovation in the market. And I think, again, that's the utopian position. So I just kind of wanted a last slide where it's a bit of like chest buffing for LRSSB. Again, my boss will be pleased, but for a small organisation that's, you know, lightly funded, and I'm not complaining, it's good to get some money. By sort of mid-2025, we've estimated we might have pumped close to £1 million back into the sector. Carl did a piece of work with the DFT where he's estimated we've given back something like £27 million worth of value because of the things that we've done collectively, and that's partner of UK Tram, and I've mentioned Edinburgh's and the Manchesters of the world. So those are just some of the things that we've either have been delivered, that are ongoing, that are pipeline, and we'll continue to do this. We've had a carrot dangled in front of us by the DFT to say, look, if you guys go ahead and find something that's really innovative and really groundbreaking and it's just for light rail, we'd love to be able to have that headline down here in the government, and we'll support that. So, you know, as I said to a couple of people in the room earlier, I'm all ears. I get to do this for a living. It's wonderful to be able to speak to people about the art of the possible. And, you know, I've no dog in the fight. I don't have to raise the money per se, but I'm happy to kind of add the expertise. Yeah, and finally, it's a bit of a cliche, isn't it? But, you know, things will not be successful or not be deemed to be successful. Maybe it's a failure, but it isn't. It's another iterative step towards maybe the next solution so that we never see a Sandilands again. So thank you for listening. And I don't know if anybody fell asleep, but...